Bharatiya perspective of journalism, media, mass communication, and human communication. Let me put the entire subject in a proper perspective and with a peep into the history, and the history that is gradually coming to light with the efforts of large number of people within the country and outside the country. All over the world, the historians, the scholars of civilizational studies, and the scholars of culture and Sanskriti, they have one agreement within themselves, even if they don't like the contention or the finding, that at least 10,000 years before Christ, there existed a highly evolved civilization in this part of the country, this part of the world, and also beyond Himalayas, that is what we call these days China. This part of Asia has witnessed a modernized, a very civilized, highly organized and evolved society, and that may date back even before 10,000 only, but there is a common agreement today that yes, there was a civilization, yes, that was highly evolved, yes, that was highly organized, yes, at that time tremendous amount of knowledge was created, discussed, shared and preserved. And when this happens, I can, to see how the world is looking at it, I'll quote from a recent book. The book's name is, this book came in early last year. The name of the book is What China and India Once Were. And the writer, some of you may be aware of the first writer. The second writer is not very well known in this part. The first writer is Sheldon Pollock, who is a scholar of Sanskrit for more than 4 decades. He works in a American university and has written about the historical evolution of India by studying the Sanskrit text. The other author is Benjamin Elman, and he is a expert of Chinese civilization, and last three decades he has been working on it. I'll just read out few lines from there, and that would put the whole thing, what I said, in a proper context. The book says that the influence of India in China is on the rise is not news. Of course, their entry into the world stage has been on the radar of politicians, business leaders, scholars, journalists and others for several decades. And a substantial body of literature has been produced during this period, testifying to the varied reactions, now welcoming, now anxious, almost always surprised, if not bemused, to this historical development. But the next sentence is more important. What has not often been realized, let alone seriously examined, is the fact that this entry is actually a re-entry. Such an examination would need to ask what the two nations were like during the period of their global domination. Friends, it's a hard fact that there was a time, maybe thousands of years ago, when this part of the country, which was at that time called either Jambudweep or Bharatvarsh or Aryavrat or Bharat. It changed its name many times, and the name India came about 300 years ago. And this part of the country was the dominating society in the world till around 1600 in terms of the world trade also. The question that should come to our minds is that if there was a highly evolved, highly cultured social system in this part of the country years ago, what was the communication system in that society? That should be our anxiety. If we accept this and the world accepts it, so we also are bound to accept it. What was the communication system of that society? How did people not only communicate with each other, but how was the communication with the masses? What were the principles of communication? Of course, we know there was nothing called Jansanchar or journalism at that time. There were no media at that time, but there were ways of communicating with small groups, with large groups, and with the masses. There were ways of it. And when we look into, we'll peep into, we'll investigate what were they doing, then we find a tremendous amount of knowledge, tremendous amounts of principles, tremendous amount of practices where communication was achieved successfully. The communication was theorized and put into practice, and also there were do's and don'ts for communication by people with themselves and with others. And today we'll try to examine them and see what were the structures and functions that enabled that society to be communicated, to create to borrow a word from the Rig Veda. It is Susamvadit Samaj. Susamvadit Samaj, there is no equivalent of the word Susamvadit. That means the society was not only full of communication, people did communicate intensively with each other, but it was all, there was a tremendous amount of positivity in it, Susamvad. And that is to be learned. And if we start finding what were the basic principles, then I will briefly put forward before you a certain amount of traditional knowledge that we gathered from various scriptures, starting from the Rig Veda to the Tulsikrit Ramcharitmanas and the Thirukuls that are very prominently accepted in the southern part of the country, and in every culture, in every subculture that existed and also exists today, there are principles that enable you to follow certain do's and don'ts about communication. Let's start with the first one. And let me put forward to you to put some kind of confidence in the ancient system of communication. We all know that every 12 years and sometimes every 6 years, there is a huge gathering of people, not only from all over India, every nook and corner of India, but people of Indian origin from other countries also gather either at Prayag or at Haridwar or at other places in Maharashtra, in Tamil Nadu, in Telangana. There are number of occasions when people gather there, and there is no formal announcement and communication for that. There is an inbuilt social system of communicating with each other when that Kumbh is going to take place, and where it is going to take place, and what are the ways of reaching there. That happens within the society without any formal or informal structure within the society. It happens. And what happens in Kumbh is also very interesting. The Harvard University 4 years ago initiated a research project on the dynamics of Kumbh, and they found that the kind of knowledge that sages, the sannyasis, they gathered while they were doing their tapasya in Himalayas, in the caves of Himalayas, they came down on these occasions, and whatever knowledge they had gained, they shared that knowledge with people who had come to Kumbh, and the spiritual and social leaders and cultural leaders who attended those Kumbhs went back to their places and disseminated this information to the common man as well. And that is how the messages of not only spiritualism, but also of the social system, also of the culture, also of the art and performing arts, they spread to the entire country, entire nation. Now, this is one example of how it used to happen. And as students of communication, as students of journalism, as teachers of communication and journalism, this must create curiosity in us that what was the dynamics of that. In the absence of any mass media, what were the methods by which everyone in the country was informed, communicated, motivated, mobilized. Now, when we talk about the ancient knowledge system, there is a very, very common proverb, very, very common saying that every one of you must have heard, and that is a very simple thing, and that is called Satyam Vad Dharmam Char. Satyam Vad Dharmam Char, it can be interpreted in two ways, and one is that if you speak the truth, if you follow the truth, if you communicate the truth, then you are following the dharma. And if you are following the dharma, then you must speak the truth. The converse is also true. Here, my dear friends, dharma is not synonymous with religion. Please mind it. Dharma is a secular terminology which does not mean or relate to any kind of belief system or any kind of worship system. It's the dictionaries, English dictionaries also explain it, the righteous way of living. The righteous way of living is the righteous way of living of the functioning of the nature around us. What are the principles on which the nature around us works, the universe around us works? If you follow those principles, that is the dharma. And every person, every profession has a dharma. There is a dharma of journalism, there is a dharma of a doctor, there is a dharma of a politician, and that is not related to any kind of worship or of sect or of belief system. Now, Satyam Vad Dharmam Char is one of the statements which is very commonly found in many scriptures, and this can be treated as the vision of the communication. And long ago, I wrote an article making a statement about the proposed vision for the entire media system, and it was agreed within a group of about 40 persons that this can be the proper vision statement for any media, be it advertising, be it public relations, be it journalism, be it at that time social media was not there, but any kind of communication, the ultimate objective has to propagate the truth, and that perhaps we can borrow from the Indian traditions of knowledge. And then what is the mission of communication? What is the mission of mass communication, or what is the mission of journalism? Why is journalism essentially required in a human society? It is a fault. Is it a fault-finding system? Is it a mechanism to create distrust among different sections of the society? Or alternatively, should journalism be a binding force? It can be connector. Mission of journalism may be to create humanity that lives in one unit and is related to each other. The concept of universal commonality of oneness is a very potent concept that evolves in traditional Indian scriptures. Integral humanism is the cherished goal of ancient saints. Indian philosophy conceives the world not only as one village, Marshall McLuhan's one village, the global village, but one large family to be projected. Marshall McLuhan made a statement in 1950s, and he is still remembered for his statement as a global village, and he could envisage the kind of technology that is going to come out in the coming years after 1950s, and he visualized a world which he called global village. For us, we should ask a question ourselves and discuss amongst ourselves, why did he call it a global village and not a global town? But beyond global village, thousands of years ago, Indian scriptures, Indian saints have talked about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that is, the entire humanity is one clan. They are not related, they are not only related to each other, but they are dependent upon each other. The entire humanity is dependent upon each other, and to achieve that dependence, to manifest that dependence, they are also connected to each other. So they live like a clan. The entire universe is one clan, and there is mutual empathy and sharing of joys and sorrows in a family. Ability of connecting the masses to each other should make the journalism to adopt universal brotherhood as its mission. After vision, we have made a statement of the mission, and this mission today, my dear friends, during this COVID-19 crisis, where the entire world is also feeling the pain of each other, feeling they are sharing the knowledge about each other, and we feel connected to everyone in the world who is either suffering or not suffering or may be suffering. And that is perhaps the example of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam has come true. Now, there is another statement which is very common and which is very profound, which perhaps we have not been able to understand in our Western thought process, and that statement is Ekam Sad Vipraha Vauda Vadanti. The diversity of expression, that is the very sense or very essence of journalism and media and of communication and of public relations, and that is Ekam Sad Vipraha Vauda Vadanti. That means the truth is one. The facts are there. The facts cannot be manipulated, but their expression, how they are analyzed, how they are expressed, how they are conveyed. There are many. There is a huge diversity in expression, but there is a unity in the truthness, and that perhaps can be called as the spirit of journalism, the spirit of mass communication. The basic foundation of the society, according to Indian knowledge system, is the unity in diversity. Diversity is the key to progress. Even the proponents of organic evolution of living beings accept that variety is key to the formation of new species. The concept is not only applied to structure and functions of the various social systems, it is also the nature of the truth. The truth is such that it has to have variety. There is a basic unity in truth, but its expression has to be diverse. Ekam Sad Vipraha Vadanti. There is only one truth, but the knowledgeable person state it in variety of formats. In journalism, journalism is nothing but pursuit of truth, and it is sharing with others. Truth cannot be. Journalism also basically a sharing process. It is not only the statement of the truth in various ways, but it is also sharing of the knowledge. That is what the journalism is. Truth cannot be allowed to be practiced at the cost of untruth, at the cost of truth. Breaking news and to be the first to break news cannot be an essentiality of journalism. Now, this perhaps we can treat it as the spirit of journalism. That is, you have the variety of expressing it. You look at the headlines of the all newspapers or the lead stories of the news bulletins or the write-ups on in the newspapers and blogs and websites and portals. You will find the same truth, same fact is represented, analyzed in different ways. And that is the beauty of communication. And that is perhaps the beauty of journalism. More the diversity, more useful and more relevant it becomes. Now, what is the purpose of journalism? What is the purpose of journalism? Let us talk about, let us borrow it from the ancient Indian traditions. There has to be socially acceptable purpose of journalism. It cannot be it cannot be to provide a mix of relevant and irrelevant information bits to the society. It has to relate to the growth and development of individuals and groups. Change is the universal constant of universe. But the human being change can be selective and can be planned. The basic input for planning and executing any change is information. We all know that our 5-year plans, particularly the second 5-year plan, it emphasized on communication. It said the message of development has to be taken to every doorstep. And perhaps that was a resonance of what was said in our scriptures. One kind of information coming from only one source can never be near the truth. Thus, multiplicity of sources of information is a desirable trait for a healthy society. Plurality of the forms and structures of media may be there, but their ownership has to be diverse. Cross ownership and huge conglomerates of media is not in the interest of a dynamic society. Our scriptures have also said about it. Mahatma Gandhi has stated this mantra so many times, and we all know that on the gates of All India Radio at Parliament Street, this is also inscribed. I don't know whether it is still there or not, but when I used to work in the newsroom there, this was there, and this mantra is Ano Bhadra Kritvo Yano Vishwata. Let the noble thoughts come to us from all sides. Mahatma Gandhi was very fond of this, and he said that मेरे पैर जमीन पे टिके रहे, मेरे मस्तिष्क की खिड़कियां चारों तरफ से खुली हैं, मगर मैं नहीं चाहता कि ऐसी आंधी आए अन्य विचारों की कि मेरे पैर उखड़ जाए. I stand firmly on my foot, but I open my mind to all kinds of thoughts. But I am stable with my foot in my own culture. Gandhi also promoted a similar concept and stated that he kept all his windows of mind open so that fresh air comes from all directions, but his feet were firmly set on his own ground. Now, our scriptures also tell us what not to do. That is, what are the limitations of communication at one-to-one level, the group level, the bigger group level, or mass communication level, or the large group, large infinite communication levels. Human wisdom never talks of absolution. It does not promote rights without duties. In fact, Bhagavad Gita, which is considered as the essence of Indian philosophy, makes one aware of one's duties only, not of the rights. Truth is the ultimate goal of every human being, but every truth is not worthy of expression and discourse. Indian saints have bound the expression of truth in a way that only that truth may be disseminated, which promotes the path of welfare of all and also which gives a feeling of happiness and bliss. Today, when we talk about the post-truth era, post-modern, ultra-modern and post-truth era, we perhaps have reached an area of scholarship which our ancients have provided for, which ancients have thought it and expressed in many ways. One of the ways is this shloka, that is Satyam Bruyat. Bruyat means speak, express. Satyam Bruyat, Priyam Bruyat. Speak the truth and speak what is priya. Na bruyat satyam apriya, priyam cha nahutam bruyat, esha dharma sanatanaha. The eternal dharma is to narrate the truth that gives pleasure to the heart, but the truth that is unpleasant may not be spoken, and never speak anything that is untrue. Now, we are very aware of the fact that untruth is not the principle of journalism. Untruth is not also the principle of advertising. Maybe exaggeration is the maybe allowed, but untruth is not allowed in any form of communication or mass communication, even in public relations also. Untruth. And today, when we are all dealing with and thinking about it, and we, the community of media teachers and media scholars, are responsible to find a solution to that when the entire society, entire the world is worried about the fake news, disinformation, misinformation, manufactured truth, and that is what our ancients had provided for. The eternal dharma to narrate the truth. The saint of God Muni Narada, anyway. So we have found the vision statement in our scriptures. We have found the mission statement in our scriptures. We have found the spirit of journalism. We have found the purpose of journalism, and we have found also the limitations of journalism. These are the statements in Sanskrit that we find repeatedly in all the scriptures, right from Vedas to Upanishads to Puranas, and to in Mahabharata and Ramayana, and also in the regional expressions of this thought process in all languages: Tamil, Telugu, Bangla, Gujarati, Braj Bhasha, Punjabi. All these are reflected in the ancient and not so ancient cultural manifestations of every part of the country. Now, the need is to go into these things and investigate, understand, analyze, and make presentation it to ourselves and to the rest of the world. Friends, 125 universities in USA, in United States of America, are working on the Indian scriptures. And mind it, they are not the departments of Sanskrit. They are the departments of ancient Indian studies. They are sometimes called Indic studies, sometimes they are called ancient India cultural studies, sometimes they are called scriptural studies. Even Infosys has donated $64 million to establish a chair to translate and study the Indian ancient scriptures. People all around the world are looking for alternatives in their own fields of studies. So, they are looking for atomic structure of what Rishi Kanad projected. They are looking into the chemistry. They are looking into the biology. They are looking into the Ayurveda, and they are also looking into the how the ancient Indians have looked at the communication and debates and dialogue. There is a book by Fred Delmeyer. He talks of integrated humanity, and all through his book he says that we have to learn to create dialogues within different groups of the humanity to create a peace, and we have to learn the art of dialogue creating from Upanishads. That is how people are looking at our scriptures. Therefore, if we ourselves start looking at this, we may be the pioneers in presenting to the world what our ancient forefathers had left to us. It is our duty and it is our endeavor also to do that. In this context, I may refer to few models of communication that can emerge from various scriptures. We all know that initially we all have studied and we also teach them, and we call it a linear model of communication: source, message, receiver, feedback at media, etc. Linear models, and we all know that the entire world has rejected it, and they say that communication is not linear, but it is more in the form of a circle, cyclic. And we talk of the Osgood's model of communication, where it keeps on ongoing process, but in the process there is decoding and interpretation and encoding, and it goes on and on. This is a cyclic process, and then there is it is related to the our vision of the structure of the society. There is a vision, the sociology, the dominant sociological paradigm for the structure of the human society is that of the concentric circles. That is, there is a individual in the center in a circle, and then the second circle is of the family, third circle is of the friends and relatives, fourth circle is that of the colleagues and extended family, then there is a circle of a gram or a town, then there is a circle of the region, then there is a circle of the nation, and then there is a circle of the entire humanity. The entire sociological structure is conceived as in the form of various concentric circles. That is every circle has a common center, and the distance from the common center goes on increasing. That goes on increasing, and that way concentric circles. But there is an alternate viewpoint of the social system, and that is called spiral system of communication. In this, you have those jotter pens, and there is a spring within it. That is the spiral system. It is not a concentric circle, but it is a circular motion, but the distance from the axis remains the same, but it goes on increasing. The vertical distance goes on increasing. Imagine a set of circles. Imagine that the one of the circle has been extended and it has been multiplied. That is the spiral. But Frank Dance, a French mathematician, who while studying mathematics as his hobby, he started understanding and comprehending the process of human communication, and he equated the mathematical formula and equations with the human communication. And we all know, who are the teachers of communication, we all know that he proposed a model called Frank Dance model of communication. And this model of communication is a helical spiral. Helical spiral you all must know, but let me explain it to you, that it is a spring. It is not a concentric circular spring, but it is a spring which expands in its diameter every day, every time. Every time it expands in circle, and it is also something similar to the structure of the DNA in our bodies, of our genes. Now, this helical spiral has been conceived in our ancient scriptures when we call Akhand Mandalakar Rachana. When we call it Akhand Mandalakar Rachana, to visualize it, imagine a huge snake sitting and having a kundali की स्थिति में बैठा हुआ एक सांप, and that is the helical spiral. But when it is elongated, it becomes a conical helical spiral. This conical helical spiral has been explained in our scriptures as the social structure and also as the model of communication. Now, briefly, I will tell you, some of you must be knowing it, but let me put the whole thing into perspective. This model is very apt for explaining the process of societal communication of today, when social media has become so prevalent that the entire system of human society appears to be highly communicated, vibrant with communication. The tremendous amount of messages that are being flown within the society is unimaginable. But this dance model of communication of helical spiral explains all this. Briefly, three things in this. That is, there is no beginning and end. There is no middle. There is no beginning and end of communication. We all know that there is no perceived beginning of communication in us. The scientists have recently proved. There was a 3 hours program on Discovery Channel which proved that the 3 months old child in the womb, the embryo, is also receiving signals and also giving signals, and whatever impressions he gets or she gets within the womb also are retained. That has been proved. Now, where is the beginning, where is the end is not sure. There is no, and it is accumulating. Every act of communication accumulates your total experience of communication, and there is no diminishing, there is no loss. And third thing is, which is very important, your previous acts of communication, cumulative communication experience impacts your present communication experience, and your present cumulative experience will impact the future communication experience. This is a very, very potent, and recently, last 5-6 years, I find that when we talk of the communication theory and the application of that theory, especially in the field of artificial intelligence and in the field of Internet of Things, this model is being used to create the system where humans communicate with machines, and machines communicate with human beings, and machines communicate with each other. This model of communication, helical spiral, which in our scriptures is called Akhanda Mandalakar Rachana, is a very important aspect of Indian model of communication that we must all try to learn and explore, and to work on it, to and to present to relate it to the other theories of communication, and to present to the world what actually is meant by Akhand Mandalakar Rachana. This Akhand Mandalakar Rachana has a human angle in it, whereas the helix model of communication is mechanical. It's also good. It also explains. But when we talk of the Akhand Mandalakar Rachana, I'm sorry, I don't have English equivalent for Akhand Mandalakar Rachana. To the best of my knowledge, it can be the infinite circular structure. But it is not circular, it is mandalakar. That means it goes on increasing or decreasing. There is an ascent and there is a descent, and it is continuous. Even it provides for a very, very, very important principle of communication, that is, no communication is also communication. When you tend to not communicate, that not communication is also adding on to the experience of communication. That perhaps is very important. Another thing that we need to study is the Natya Shastra of Bharat Muni. In fact, Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra is nothing but the science of group communication, science of large and medium group communication. Natya Shastra, it talks about the whole gambit of how to communicate, how to tell effectively, how to mislead, and how to misguide. This all is there in the, it is it is not only the Natya Shastra is not only related to the present terminology of theatre, but it relates to the human communication, that is group communication and large group communication. And some people have borrowed two terms from it. You all must be aware of it, and these two terms are Sadharanikaran and Sahirday. Sadharanikaran is the process of converting the truth and facts into a deliverable format. That is Sadharanikaran. There is no English version of that. It is not simplification, but it is to create in a format which can be given to a Sadharan Purush. That is the best near the best explanation of this. And second concept is more of a psychological concept, that is called Sahirday. Sahirday is the nearest English terminology is empathy. That is, you become mentally one of the other person. You mentally conceive yourself to the others. But let us see it as Sahirday. But Natya Shastra is not only Sahirday or Sadharanikaran, it is much more than that. Incorporating Sahirday and Sadharanikaran in some of the Western models has been attempted. That is a good attempt. But we have to go beyond that. Perhaps that is one way of looking at, because whole Bharat Muni is science of dialogue. Then you have Patanjali, whose works are the science of linguistics, its grammar, it's the origin of sounds, it's the origin of the script, it is the origin of words, it is the science and technology of meanings, and it is the science and technology of sentence making and problems of miscommunication also. It deals with this. Now, I will not go into the details of Bharat Muni and Patanjali, but I have an appeal to those who are interested in it. I think we should, some of us should start investigating into it, and maybe we can produce some good literature on this. Another important aspect is that once I was invited to present an Indian mode of Indian perspective of communication, the ancient Indian perspective of communication in one of the universities in Melbourne, Australia. And I started with a question. There were 23 persons. I started with a question that from India, I was the only person. How many of you go to either church or a masjid? Out of the 23, 17 raised their hands. And I asked them, what do you do when you go to a church or a masjid? They said, they gave different answers, but the crux of the answer was that we try to communicate with self and we try to communicate with the Almighty. Now, I asked them a question. If you go to the church or a masjid or a temple, and you also know that most people, not all, but a large majority of the people go to the places, or they sit down and try to communicate with themselves, self-communication or communication done. How come we have not included this communication in our syllabi when we talk of the science of or the subject of human communication? That created a new group of spiritual communication, and after about 18 years, that group of 11 persons is still working, and we are all working on this. Sometimes we call it spiritual communication, sometimes we call it self-communication, sometimes we call it self-realization, and sometimes we call the perception studies. How are the perceptions and the belief systems are created within the mind of the people. Now that becomes very important, and for that I suggest that we examine these following things from the communication point of view. I think I still have 7 minutes with me. Simaji? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I suggest that we these days these yoga practices are very common all over the world, and we have popularized all asanas and some kind of meditation also. But perhaps it is the time when the communication scholars, the journalism scholars, the mass communication scholars, they they start looking for the processes and dynamics of the processes of pranayam, asanas, dharana, dhyan, samadhi, and anubhuti. You know, in ancient scriptures, it is said that there was no labs, there was no experiments, but the scientists, they thought about the process, they investigated the process, and then they they thought about the process, they sat, went into samadhi, and there was a process. We have to check it, we have to verify it. To some it would be not believable, but it is said that when they went into a trance or a samadhi, there was a dialogue between the nature and their mind. There was a dialogue between them, and the nature started revealing itself to them. And that perhaps is one of the areas, either we have to prove that it was true or we have to prove that this was not true. This is an open question, but we have to look at it. Now, when we talk of the speech communication, there is a division of speech in our scriptures. Nyaya Shastra talks about it. Adi Shankaracharya has talked about it, and they say that the speech is of four kinds, and some of you have already known it. This is called para, this is pashyanti, madhyama, and vakri. What we talk, what I am talking is vakri. That is what we express. The sound that produces vakri, but the rest three are first, they are in the first stage, that is conceptual stage. Then that it comes to the mind, it concretizes. Then it goes to the decision-making process, what we call encoding, and then it is expressed. Perhaps this is another area where the Indian concept of the dialogue needs to be investigated and incorporated with the helical model of communication of the Frank Don. Then there is these days what happens in on the TV and the discussions that take place. There is a classification made by in one of the scriptures, and Shankaracharya is also talking about it, and he says that the dialogue can be divided into four types. One type is samvad, that is, you talk with each other, irrespective of what you are talking about, but you talk with each other and convey and communicate. Then he says the second is samvad, that is, there is a positivity in your talk. The vad may be positive or negative, vad may be relevant or irrelevant, but samvad is the positivity, su-samvad. And then there is jalpa. Jalpa is a kind of dialogue which is not harmonious, which is a debate, which is wrangle. It's called wrangle also. And then there is the fourth kind of dialogue or the discussion that we find today in the television channels, when 2, 3, 4 persons are speaking simultaneously. They do not listen to each other. They would talk whatever they think they should talk, and there is no sense in it. This is called vitanda. I think those people who are researching or trying to understand the kind of debates we have on television or in social media, I think they should also look into the classification of the communication content in terms of samvad, vad, samvad, jalp, vivad, and vitanda. Charak Samhita also talks about the Charak Samhita is normally associated with the theory of health maintenance, how to keep good health, and how to perform surgeries and that kind of thing. Ayurveda, the basic of Ayurveda. But it also talks about the peaceful debate and horrible debates, hateable debates. It also talks about, we also all are aware of the kind of tradition that we had in our country, what is called the debates between the people, and that happened between Shankaracharya and one of the leading lights in Munde, in Varanasi, and how it happened, how it was lost. But they were all debates of that led to creation of new knowledge. In those debates, there was a winner and there was a loser. And the tradition was that the loser will go, that he would decide, he would do it, that he would become the disciple of the winner. And that is what has happened in many of the debates. And perhaps last thing that the scriptures tell us, and that was also the Ghosh Vakya, the main motto of the Doordarshan, and what also talks about the entire purpose and the consequence of communication, and that perhaps we have to borrow again from the Indian scriptures, and none of the models or the explanations of communication we have so far studied says it. And very simple thing, Satyam Shivam Sundaram. Our communication has to be truthful. It has to be, Shivam means it is not related to Shiva, Lord Shiva. Shivam means it has to be welfare oriented. It has to be Kalyan oriented. The word is Kalyan. And Sundaram means it should be it should feel pleasant. Our heart, our mind, our body should feel pleasant. That perhaps is the whole game of communication, that we can present it to the rest of the world. That is Satyam Shivam Sundaram. In the last, I would try to, I will like to narrate a cultural tradition that tells us what kind of communication our societies were expecting from the leaders of communication, or the lead communicators. In Punjab, there is a tradition of Bhangra, there is a tradition of Gidda, and there are many traditions of song and dance. One of the tradition is called Boli. It is called Boli, that is, Boli means that there is a statement. The statement goes like this, that Bari Varshi Khatan Gyasi, that for 12 Varsh, 12 years or many years, you have gone outside, you have left the family and went out. Now, Bari Varshi Khatan Gyasi, Khatke ki lyaya. What have you gained? After many years of living away from your family, what have you gained? The person would make a statement, and that statement would be the universal truth. And then the narrator would ask 3 questions, and the people would answer and dance with that. That is a very popular thing, and as communicators, we must try to understand it. The first question the narrator asks is, "Ki main jhoot bolaya?" Have I told the untruth? And the audience dances with a song saying, "Koi na bhai, koi na bhai, koi na." That means no, you have not said the untruth. The second question that the narrator asks is, have you ki main kufr to liya? That means, have I said something which is immoral? And the audience dances with pleasure, and they say, "Koi na bhai, koi na bhai, koi na." No, you are not done. What you have said is truth. And then he says, "Ki main zahar ko liya?" Have I sent poison into the society by saying what I have done? Is it harmful to the society? And the people would dance and say. Now, perhaps in journalism, in every kind of communication that whether it is a blog or a social media, or whatever it is in terms of fake communication also, perhaps we have to apply these three tests, these litmus tests. One is jhoot, that is untruth. Second is kufr, that is immoral. And third is jahr, that means breaking. Does my communication break the society? Does my communication is my communication immoral, or is my communication untruth? If this we can learn from our traditions, and if we can work on it, make theorize on it, create models, perhaps we'll create a new system of knowledge with regard to communication, with regard to media, with regard to mass communication, with regard to journalism, and also with regard to social media. There is so much to talk about it, but in 1 hour, whatever I thought quickly I should present to you. Thank you so much. If there are any questions, I'll ready to answer them, but I don't assure you that I'll be able to answer all your queries. Be prepared for an answer that I don't know.
Thank you, Professor Kutyala.